Good evening and welcome to the final GSB executive debate for 2013. My name is Adam Gunther and I'm the election commissioner for the government of the student body. Tonight's topics will be discussed will be government of the student body issues and leadership and as the president and vice president. Today we're going to start with 2-minute opening statements with Hughes and Rediske and Zach Bauer.
All right, thanks, Adam. Thank you for coming out, all of you for coming out tonight. It's good to see some faces after the last debate. It was kind of sparsely attended because of the snowstorm, but it's great to see that you're here, being informed about the issues. So Zach and I have been running a campaign over the last 6 weeks on bringing life back to GSB through communication, projects, and representation. And Zach and I really think that if GSB is communicating better, that it will represent students better. And that if we're communicating well, we'll do projects that really impact student life for the better. So we think that communication is key when it comes down to GSB. And so really that's what Zach and I are focusing on, is really making GSB work for students and build a better student experience. So with that, I will turn it over to Tim.
Thank you. Next we have an opening statement from Spencer Hughes and Hillary Kletscher.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out to tonight's debate. We look forward to sharing our ideas and talking about why we think that we're the best candidates for president and vice president for the government of the student body. My name is Spencer Hughes. I'm a junior in speech communication and political science.
And I'm Hillary Kletscher. I'm a sophomore in biological systems engineering. Spencer and I have really put our focus on students. And so we've spent our campaign time so far running the Students First campaign.
We think that we're well qualified for this position because of the type of experienced leadership that we've had, both inside and outside of GSB over the past few years. Having served as a senator for the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences for 2 years, as well as serving as the Speaker of the Senate, which is the Senate's chief officer, and also now having executive branch experience as the Director of Student Affairs, I really feel well suited to really hit the ground running from day one as the president of GSB and get things done and get things accomplished right off the bat.
And my time in government of the student body has been spent as a College of Engineering senator and now recently as a University Affairs Committee chair. So it's been a really exciting experience for me this last year to become familiar with the government of the student body and figure out how we can best represent the students.
So Hillary and I look forward to discussing more of our platform tonight throughout the debate, and we look forward to the discussion that's to come. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Director Hughes. So our first question goes to Rediske Bauer, and it is, what is your top priority once you're elected?
I think our top priority is hitting the ground running with making sure that GSB is prepared to reach out and communicate with students. We think that GSB needs to be a cohesive unit, and it needs to be from day one working towards bettering the student experience. And that comes with really making sure that everyone is ready to work for students.
Thank you.
Well, I'll say the first thing that Hillary and I plan to do, if elected, is to take the GSB executive payments and redirect that money into the pot of funds that student organizations can access. But our top priority throughout the whole entire year, really, is to improve the way that GSB relates to the student body as a whole. Because we feel that the way that GSB communicates with students is really ineffective right now. And I think that it can be done a lot better if we take full advantage of every channel that's available to us. Person-to-person interaction, working with Cabinet, Senate, as many people as possible to really collaborate on communication, taking advantage of Twitter, Facebook, website, as many new 21st century avenues that we really haven't fully explored yet, and making sure that the message of GSB and the message of the student body is on the same page.
Thank you.
I mean, I guess just to kind of continue on with that, I think that it's really important that we make sure that not only Zach and I, but really the entirety of GSB is able to communicate all of the aspects of GSB, the projects that we're planning on working on, what our plans are for the year, and really how we can go about serving students best. Yes, GSB does need to communicate better and communicate in different ways, but we think that knowledge is the first step, because even if you communicate well and have a lot of first-hand interaction, but you don't have any knowledge about how GSB can help students, it's not going to be useful.
Thank you. Anything else, Director Hughes, Senator Kletscher?
Yeah, we would just like to add on to that. Throughout our campaign, we've met with phenomenal student leaders and student organizations across campus that are excited about some of the ideas that we have. Spencer and I have a bold and ambitious plan. And to accomplish what we want to accomplish throughout our year, we need to start right away working on our projects and bringing students in to work on those projects, because the more motivated student leaders we have working on a project, the more we can accomplish. And it really is about the entire campus, not just what we can achieve as members of the government of the student body.
Thank you. The next question comes from the audience, Jamie Chamberlain.
All right, this question is directed towards both the vice presidents. I guess my question for you guys is, what are your goals as vice president?
So that will begin with Senator Kletscher.
Yeah, I think one of my big goals as vice president is to, first of all, to familiarize everyone a little bit with what the vice president does. One of the duties of the vice president is to run the weekly GSB Senate meetings, as well as obviously attend all the cabinet meetings and work as the right-hand, well, woman in my case, for the president. So with that, I think it's important to, at that role in running meetings for senators, is to make sure that senators do understand what's going on. Last year was my first year as a senator, and it's quite overwhelming. And I think just reaching out to those senators is something that I want to do, and that's something that I've been able to do now this term as new senators have come in. Reach out to new senators, make sure that they're familiar with what's going on in Senate so we can be effective as an entire government of the student body. And besides that, like I said before, get started on projects right away, reach out to those students, and keep those connections strong so that we can really accomplish things that we want to accomplish.
Thank you. Zach Bauer.
Yeah, so, I mean, Hillary kind of mentioned it, the main priority of the vice president is to obviously run the Senate meetings, so work with Senate primarily. And kind of what I would first do as vice president is sit down individually with all the senators, either by themselves or in a group, and kind of get their opinion on what they want to do in GSB and how I can help them achieve that, what resources I can connect them through the university, and just educating them on what GSB is and how we can affect students and student organizations. Because a lot of the time the problems with GSB is that we don't communicate with each other. We don't communicate internally, we don't communicate externally. So by educating senators on what GSB is, what we can do, what resources we provide, the senators are then able to go out and speak to their constituents and relay those thoughts and concerns of how GSB can affect their student experience. And then also, just overarching, is assisting the president in his duties or in his absence. So communicating with university administrators, local and state legislators, those types of things.
Thank you. Senator Kletscher, anything else?
Yeah, I would just add on to that I don't foresee myself sitting down individually with senators. I think it'd be more important to reach out to maybe new senators and then work directly with the Speaker of the Senate, whoever that is selected to be, and encourage them to sit down individually with senators. Obviously be there as a resource for senators, but I think it's great to have the leading person in the Senate really get to know each senator very well. I mean, obviously I'll be there to build personal connections, but I think it's beneficial to have a good relationship as a senator with the Speaker of the Senate because the resources that they have to offer are unbelievable. So that's all I've got.
Okay. And following up, anything?
Yeah, I think that the vice president should sit down with all the senators, because it goes back to this communication problem within GSB, that the executive branch doesn't communicate with the legislative branch as much as it should. So by having the vice president and even the president sit down with those senators, we're able to establish that communication early on. So like I said, we're able to take on those projects and initiatives. We're able to inform senators of what GSB is and what it can do for them, regardless if they're new senators or if they're old senators, because there's always information to learn that we can pass on to students. Stuff changes every year, so I think GSB will really benefit as a whole by establishing those relationships between the executive and legislative branches.
Thank you. The next question is, what from the current administration do you plan to keep and what do you plan to get rid of once elected? And we'll start with this level.
I think that one of the things from the current administration that I plan to keep is the reporting style, I guess, within GSB meetings of what's going on in the executive branch. I think that's important to relay that during GSB meetings. But I think that I would go further, that I think it's important to continue the communication on throughout the rest of the week. I think in some shape or form there needs to be communication throughout the week within GSB to let people know, if something comes up, or what meetings are going on. letting students be able to find out what meetings I'm having during the week, I think is very important. So other than that, I'm not really sure what I would keep from the current administration. I haven't had a turnover packet, I guess, handed to me or shown everything that they're doing. So I think our communication problem kind of hinders me from answering this question completely.
Hughes, Kletscher?
I think a couple of things that have been really positive additions to GSB from the current administration are first, the way that GSB Senate meetings are now available for everybody to follow via the Twitter account. So every Wednesday night, we're tweeting what's going on at the meetings. This bill passed, this bill failed, this is what's happening at GSB. It's just another way to keep people informed of what's going on. And it's something that we plan to continue. Another thing that we plan to continue is the current outreach ISU program that was established this year. It's in effect for the cabinet by executive order right now, which means it could be retracted at any time by the president. And that's something that we think is a positive step. It's a way for cabinet members to really be engaged across campus with student leaders and be doing a number of different things to make sure that they're really plugged into the student body as a whole. So we plan on continuing that as well. One thing that I would definitely change is right now, kind of sticking on the Twitter point, there's a Twitter account, GSB President, which is really the account that's meant to let people know what the president's up to. It was an idea we borrowed from the University of Kansas, and their KU president account has something like 800 or 900 followers, and it's really engaged and it's really active. And that's something that I want to bring here and let people know what's going on, not with GSB as a whole necessarily, but if I have a meeting with Tom Hill or with President Leaf, I can let people know what we talk about, and if they want to share their thoughts or share their opinions, they can tweet at me, and I can share that with President Leaf or Dr. Hill in the blink of an eye.
Anything else to add?
I guess I kind of took those programs for granted as being continued, considering Zach and I authored the Outreach ISU program in the Senate, and really worked as a partnership to help develop that one with members of the cabinet and everything else. So I figured that, I guess I kind of glanced over that one when I thought about the program. Twitter is certainly one way I want to continue outreach. I think that we need to expand our outreach though, and make sure that it's available in as many places as possible, including people-to-people interactions. So.
Thank you. Hughes, Kletscher? Our next question comes from the audience. Brian Voss from Freshman Council.
How will you be more visible to organizations on campus and help them to achieve their goals?
We're going to start with Hughes, Kletscher.
That's something that we have kind of realized has been an issue throughout the campaign when we visit with student organizations. And they have problems that they don't know the solutions to, but we can pretty quickly identify something that GSB can do to help. And I think that it goes along with, it's more than just a communication problem, it's a problem with us really being plugged into what's going on. And part of the Outreach ISU program that's currently established is you can get certain points towards your goal by visiting student organizations. And that's something that we absolutely plan to do, and we're going to go above and beyond with that. Make sure that we're out there, we're communicating with students, visiting student clubs, and just seeing, what kind of issues are you facing? Because a lot of times, students who are really active in their organizations, they have problems and they don't know where to turn. But people in our position who maybe are more familiar with some of the solutions can quickly identify a way to fix that problem, and it's fixed pretty simply. It doesn't really take a whole lot of effort, and then everybody's happy. So I definitely think that that's the most important way to make things easier for student organizations, is to just be there for them and have those interpersonal interactions.
Thank you. Rediske, Bauer.
I guess the simplest way to put it is that the campaign for building a better student experience can't stop once the election happens. We win the election, I think that it's important that we continue to do outreach, talking about ways that we can improve campus, getting feedback from student organizations, reaching out to students, whether that be through, I guess, direct outreach in the free speech zone, whether that be through Facebook, Twitter, you name it online, we probably give it a shot. Whether that be through a couple interesting ideas such as a feedback website where you could visually see what other people have posted as things that they think could be improved at Iowa State, and based on the number of responses it would get larger or change color. I thought that that would be a pretty neat way to give feedback, and maybe something that students would find unique and interesting. But most importantly, I think it's really just not disappearing. Because what happens with GSB is that there's a lot of outreach in the spring when you want to be elected, but it can't stop when the election happens.
Anything else, Hughes, Kletscher?
Yeah, just to add on to what Spencer was talking about, we have met with a lot of student organizations so far and found out a lot about what they're interested in and some projects that they would like to see happen here on campus. So I think another important step, besides just meeting with students and talking to them, is really empowering them. Asking them to join us on projects and have them meet, when we're meeting with administration, bring them with, because then just like that, we are the contact for them to Dr. Hill or any of the other phenomenal administration leaders across campus. They have a direct connection. So I think it's beyond just us talking to them, it's really empowering them so that for their next project, they don't even need to go through us.
Thank you.
I guess the one thing I didn't mention in my first part of my answer is that one of the things I would love to see GSB doing is open forums on specific areas of student life. We had an open forum before break, and we had really a wide array of administrators available to field questions. And several of the administrators didn't get very many questions because we were focusing on issues that really kind of singled out 3 of the 5 on the panel. We think that these open forums can serve students really well. It's really GSB stepping out of the way and allowing students to give feedback on what student life is. And so we believe that having a little bit of a focus to our open forum events really will serve students better. And it's a way for GSB to empower the student voice by letting the students be heard directly.
Thank you. The next question is, what is something new that you want to bring to GSB once elected? We'll start again with Hughes and
I think one of the things I want to bring to GSB that's new is a cohesive view to being in the organization. In my time in GSB, it's really felt like you're either part of the legislative branch or you're part of the executive branch. It really needs to be, I'm part of GSB and I happen to have a role in the legislative branch or the executive branch. I happen to be the president. That might be a better way to look at it instead of saying, this is the executive of GSB and we've achieved this. It's GSB has achieved this for student experience. I think that that's one of the things is that when we're reporting what we've worked on for students and worked on for student experiences or what we've empowered students to achieve, it can't be the executive empowered students to achieve this, the Senate funded that. GSB needs to do things as a whole. That's one thing I want to bring. I would love to bring the free e-textbook for general education classes to GSB because I think that's a way to reduce the student burden in these financial times.
Hughes and Rediske.
I think what we'll bring to GSB that is new and that will help us accomplish a lot is a more of a collaborative approach on projects. And Hillary mentioned this earlier. When we're working on a project, like for example, the bike share program that we want to establish at Iowa State, so a student can swipe their card, borrow a bicycle to ride across campus. That's a project that we think is a great idea, but when we brought it up at a student organization meeting, there's a student, his name is Justin. He let us know that he's working on a bike share program for his senior thesis. And he's not involved with GSB at all. So we talked to him, we brought him on board, and in the future we'll be working with him on that project. And it's the collaborative effort, not just within GSB, but across the student body as a whole. If we want to accomplish some of our more ambitious and bold goals, like establishing a bike share program, creating the ability to use dining dollars at off-campus locations, really expanding the student answer center so students can take full advantage of that resource in Beardshire Hall that nobody really knows about, and expanding the sustainability efforts across our campus to really make this place as green as it can be. It's going to take more than just GSB. It's going to take everybody in this room, and it's going to take a lot of people outside of this room, and we want to make it as easy as possible for everyone to get involved.
Anything else to add?
I think that really sounds a lot like what I've been saying for the last 6 weeks when it comes to representation, that GSB can't do it alone, that it needs to be every student that really wants to have an impact on the student experience. So I think that that's just echoing what I've been saying for the last 6 weeks.
I think we're, in large part, we're seeing things the same way, but I think some of the difference in scope of what we're talking about is that the projects that we're really looking to accomplish are some of the, we're going all out. Hillary and I have some ideas that are going to take a lot of time to accomplish. It's going to take the whole year, and it might take even more. And I've used this phrase before, but they're bold and they're ambitious goals. And we think that we're going to shoot high and we're going to see what happens. And I think that that provides a little bit of contrast between the slates, because that's really what we're going for. We're going to need as much help as possible from the entire student body to really accomplish some really ambitious goals. And that's really why we think that we want to serve in this position.
Thank you. The next question deals with an issue that both slates have mentioned on numerous occasions, and that is of the executive payments for the president, the vice president, the finance director. So that question is, what are your thoughts on the executive payments of the 3 execs, and then how do you plan on implementing that plan? We'll start with Hughes question.
Well, I'm glad this question came up. I was looking for it last time, but this is really a big part of our campaign. If you're not familiar, there are 3 positions in GSB that get paid for what they do: the president, the vice president, and the finance director. And they're eligible for as much as all expenses paid, tuition, fees, room and board, and benefits for the summer, fall, and spring of their term. If that student that is president or finance director is out of state, as an example, they're eligible for as much as $37,000 in payments, and $90,000 total between the 3 positions. This comes straight out of the same student activity fee that all students pay. And that's money that GSB would otherwise be allocating to student organizations, just like GSB always does. But instead it's going to just 3 people. And it's an issue that I've always had with what GSB does. It's something that I've tried to change for a few years. There have been some concerns raised, like what if a student needs the money to pay their way through school? But in the past, a student who has received executive payments has also worked a part-time job outside of GSB, while at the same time receiving payments from the executive payments. So if a student needs the money, they can work a part-time job and also serve as a GSB executive while being a student. It would take a lot of work, but they'd have to go into that with the understanding that it would be hard work. And at the end of the day, we need to be spending this money as effectively as possible because it's a limited pile of funds, and more student organizations are coming to us and requesting funding. So this is $90,000, as much as $90,000, that we can easily find and use more effectively.
Thank you, Director Hughes. Rediske, Bauer.
Okay, so I guess to talk a little bit about how this is budgeted, first off, is that what the Finance Committee and what the Finance Director does when allocating the budget for a fiscal year is they actually have the knowledge of who was elected when they finish the budget. So we don't allocate more money than we need. So it's not $90,000 every year. For in-state, it's less, and that would be the case this year because both of the presidents are in-state students. So characterizing it as $90,000 is a little bit of a high shot. Second, Senate really has the power to change this. So it would really take a partnership with the Senate and a long discussion about the responsibilities. So to talk a little bit about, I guess, some of the different places that you'll find the feedback about this. This has been an issue since longer than just 1999. There's a daily article that we have here that they talk about compensation for executives. And we have a daily article from last year that has the president talking about how the average week is 40 hours. And there are many weeks that go much longer. And that it's really sporadic hours. And the fact that you can work a 20-hour-a-week job, that's good. But when you look at, say, Chandra Peterson, whose bio mentions that she supported her time at Iowa State and being involved, because she was a previous vice president, that she could not have been as involved as she was if it weren't for scholarships as well as the GSB compensation.
Right on time. Next, we have Hughes Metro for rebuttal.
Yeah, so Dan mentioned that it's not $90,000 a year, and it's not. It could be as much as $90,000 if the 3 positions are out of state, which isn't a hard scenario to imagine. If 3 people come from outside of Iowa, then it would be $90,000, which is a significant portion of the GSB budget. He also mentioned that Senate has the power to change this, and he's right about that. The bylaws can only be changed by a Senate vote. So in the future, what Hillary and I plan to do is on day 1 of our administration, we will direct the funds that would have been given to us through this payment to be redirected to and have the opportunity for those funds to be allocated to student organizations next year. And then throughout our term over the next year, we'll be working with the Senate to change these rules so that the money just automatically goes there. So that's where we are on that.
Thank you. Rediske, Bauer again.
Yes. So to kind of finish up what I was saying, our stance on this is that we don't believe that a student should be held back from serving the GSB executive, being the GSB's and the student's strongest advocate for student issues because of their financial situation. Last year's finance director told me directly that she could not have done finance director without having a part-time job because she still had bills to pay. She was an out-of-state student. She'd already built up debt. By the time that students become leaders in GSB, there's already debt there. It's not necessarily that these students are just walking in, and it's just a year. So it really becomes, I want the best advocate, and I think that that's really important, that any student who is the best advocate can do the job. I think that unburdening them so that students really have the strongest voice, and the person who has the best leadership for them is able to be in the position.
Yes, Zach?
Am I allowed to ask a question? What?
Next question comes from Jordan Hutchins from the audience.
I have a direct question related to exactly what you were just talking about.
The next question comes from Jordan Hutchins from the audience.
My question's for the vice president candidates. Similar to what was touched on earlier, but specifically how would you work in conjunction with the president and the Senate to accomplish your goals and your duties as vice president?
We'll start with Rediske Bauer.
Yeah, I think, like we've been saying already, it takes more than just Dan and I to take on these projects and initiatives. It takes more than our 10-person cabinet. It really takes all of GSB working cohesively to get these project and initiatives started, and to better the student experience. So like I stated previously, sitting down with senators to kind of gauge their goals for the year, so that way we can help them, connecting them with the correct resources to get those goals and initiatives accomplished, I think is the main way to kind of increase the communication and the cohesiveness between GSB within the executive and legislative branches. Because, like I stated, it can't just be the executive branch working on something and then the legislative branch working on something completely different. It takes GSB as a whole to get these things done. It takes the executive branch to kind of initiate the projects, start them up, and then it takes the Senate to help throw their hand in and help by whether it be funding or just kind of building off of that, because we have more resources when we're all combined working together.
Next, we redirect from Spencer Hughes and Hillary Kletscher.
Okay, so your question was exactly how I'd work with people within the government student body. I think you already know that Spencer and I want to work with students, but I'm really going to address your question and kind of talk a little bit about my personal leadership style when working on projects, so you kind of know what to expect. I'm very much a lay it out, be upfront type of person. So my expectations for working on projects is if Spencer and I are working on something, I'm going to tell him what I think, he's going to tell me what he thinks. We're going to lay out goals that are sub-goals of the overall goal and have mini deadlines within projects, because we have to keep ourselves on track to actually achieve what we want to achieve. Besides that, working in the Senate, it's going to office hours when I know there's a senator that's interested in a project and talking to them about it. It's finding the senators who are passionate about what they're working on and what we're working on, so that we can get people who want to actually see change happen involved in a project. It's just sitting down, having the meetings, having Google Docs if you don't have time to meet, and just putting forth the effort every week towards one more small step to chip away at that overall goal.
Thank you. Anything else from Rediske Bauer, Zach?
Yeah, I guess kind of touching on how I would work with Dan as president is that I think with Dan and I, we have a good relationship together, that I'm not afraid to tell him if his idea needs improvement, and he's not afraid to tell myself the same thing. So I think by being open and honest with each other, we'll be able to build on our experiences, build on our projects that we're initiating to make them the absolute best. So like I said again, it's not just Dan and I. We can get input from the Senate, we can get input from the cabinet, we can get input from students, because we can't do it alone. We need student partnership in order to execute the offices successfully.
Thank you. Lastly, Ms. Kletscher? Okay. Now we will have a question from Zach Morrill from the audience.
Okay. I'd just like to ask an open question. How do the payments that the compensations that we give to the executives here compared to the compensations that other universities give to their student bodies, and should that have any bearing on what we should do, or have you learned anything from how they do things?
I think I believe we start with Hughes Kletscher.
So I have some familiarity with what other universities do. Some pay more, some pay less. As one example, the University of Kansas is probably the one I'm the most familiar with. And they have an entire executive staff that gets paid from the fees, including the president, vice president. They're pretty much what their equivalent of the cabinet would be, is paid. Which I don't see as the right approach, and I don't think that's something we should base what we do here on. Another example in contrast is Texas A&M University. as much as I might not like them because they ditched us from the conference. Their president of their student government gets one perk: free dry cleaning for a year. That's the perk that they get at Texas A&M. They're proud of it. They love that perk. I had the opportunity to speak with their Speaker of the Senate at the Big 12 Student Government Conference 2 years ago, and she let me know that that was really a coveted thing. They got free dry cleaning for a year. They didn't get any scholarship, no stipend, no benefits, no room and board, but they still had passionate student leaders who ran for the position, still had people who poured themselves into it, and had a really strong student government association at Texas A&M. And so using that as an example, they are one of our 10 peer institutions in the Peer 11. I think that that's a great example. If Texas A&M can do it, why can't Iowa State?
Thank you.
I guess to kind of restate what Spencer said, obviously that's the state. There's a gamut from entire executives and some of the senates being compensated in some shape or form to dry cleaning only. I actually hadn't heard that story before Spencer had spoken about it at a previous speaking engagement because I didn't get a chance to go on that Big 12 Student Government Conference. But I really think it needs to be said that I want to do what's best for GSB and not, comparing it to other places, because GSB really needs to make decisions that are in its best interests and in the students' best interests. So if it's in the best interest of students to have any student be able to do this regardless of their financial situation, then so be it. If it's not worth the money to do so, then that's the way it is.
Anything else, just question?
Yeah, I think our perspective is we want to do what's best for the student body as a whole and the student organizations that GSB represents and funds. And we see more and more funding requests getting cut every year, where at the same time we have examples of students that do the kind of work GSB executives are doing, and they're not getting full tuition scholarships every year for that work. This is money that's easily available that we can use much more effectively that will help students in a much better way, so that student groups that come and ask for funding receive more of what they get, and the groups that are currently getting cut for completely and are not funded, perhaps more of them can become eligible, because we're making more money available to the student body. And it is your money, after all. You're the ones who pay the fees. You should be the ones that get the utility out of the money. And that's really where Hillary and I are coming at this issue from. It's not right for every student to essentially pay extra so that 3 students can pretty much pay nothing.
So I guess to talk a little bit about student organizations getting cut, that's not quite the way it works. The Senate does set their own priorities and criteria, and the Finance Committee encourages them to follow it. So student organizations are given a set of rules that funding is allocated within. So when we still have money left over sitting in GSB accounts right now, we're not out of money. That's not the way it is. We do very principled funding within GSB. I guess to talk a little bit about some of the other students on campus who make significant investments. I had a student leader yesterday look me in the eye and tell me that they would not want to do the GSB job because it is such a time commitment, that they would not want someone to be, not focusing fully on it because they needed to have 1 or 2 jobs. They would prefer the GSB executive not have any other jobs. And so I think I get that dedication that that student leader wanted. I mean, you can't have that.
Right.
Thank you, Weston. Our next question goes to Rediske Bauer, and that is, what do you see as the primary function of the government and student body on Iowa State campus?
The primary function of the government student body on the Iowa State campus is to connect students with the administration at Iowa State. We are to be the voice for students, and we need to be empowering students to make change, to keep the student experience great. Because, as we know, Iowa State's growing at almost an unprecedented rate. And that's because the student experience is something that students know about, that high school students know about, that prospective students come and see and are excited about. But we have to be able to keep that up. And at the same time, that's where GSB comes in that we're really the first connection oftentimes, where university administrators will really look for student input, and they'll say, how are we doing? What do you think of this idea? This is a problem that we've heard about come up through our pipelines. Have you heard anything about it? And I think that's really important, that we make sure that GSB is available for students, is communicating well with students. This is our primary function. Our primary function is not just to hand out money. The Senate's primary function is not just to hand out money. There to be a voice for students as well. It's not just the executive that goes to meetings. There are students throughout GSB, and even students who aren't on GSB that represent GSB in committee meetings in Iowa State. So that's our function. It just so happens that we also help delegate the student fee, which is important, but I think not our primary role.
Thank you. Follow up with Spencer Hughes and Rediske.
When you boil down GSB to as simple as it gets, it really has two main functions. One is to fund student organizations and events, and the other is to advocate for students across all levels, whether it be university administration, the Board of Regents, the Iowa legislature, even the United States Congress, and there are members of GSB in Washington, D.C. right now who are doing just that, lobbying Congress. But the primary function of GSB I do see is the advocacy role. Because what GSB can best do is have its finger on the pulse of what's going on at the university, what students are thinking are issues on campus. Nobody knows a student like a fellow student. And so fellow student leaders have the opportunity to really know what's going on and take those issues that are across campus, synthesize them into a message that we can then share with the university administration. We can then provide an opportunity to empower that student to share their own message with the university administration. And we can really make sure that that type of communication is being facilitated properly. Because when a student has an issue, and I'm sure most people here know this, most of the time they're not going to share that issue with somebody who can actually solve it. And so GSB can help by either providing the information to that student about what they can do, hey, this is the person you need to contact, or taking the issue ourselves and running with it and saying, you know what, this is a real problem, we're going to take this and we're going to solve it. And I think that type of advocacy is the most important thing that GSB can do.
Anything else for Rediske at all?
I think we'll achieve this advocacy by making sure that all members of GSB can tell you what GSB is up to and where we're representing students actively and what initiatives are going on in those places. I think that it's one thing to say that we'll communicate with students and get a pulse on it, but it doesn't help if we don't have the knowledge to utilize those resources, to utilize those connections for student benefit, and to empower students to use those connections. You have to know about them. We can't have 3 people contacting the same person from within GSB if they're all talking about the same thing. We need to have internal communication. We need to be on the same page working for a better student experience.
Last up?
Yeah, I think Dan is right that there needs to be more knowledge across GSB, but internal communication really shouldn't be the main focus when we're talking about advocating for students. It's more about the external communication and connecting with students across campus, not in GSB necessarily, and making sure that we really know what's going on. Because student life doesn't just happen in the Campanile Room at 7 p.m. on Wednesday nights, which is when the GSB Senate meets, and we all know that. We need to make sure that we're connected with the student body as a whole. We have that external communication flowing out of GSB to the student body, coming back to GSB from the student body as a whole, making sure we know what's going on so that we have the opportunity to really attack issues from the proper angle, from the proper perspective, and make sure that we have a really united message moving forward with whatever it is that we're talking about.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Spencer Hughes and Hillary Kletscher, and that is, why do you think the average ISU student either has a negative or apathetic view of GSB, and how would you, once elected as president and vice president of GSB, work to make it more of a positive viewpoint?
I think a lot of that comes from the fact that GSB doesn't do a good job of really tooting its own horn, and that's not a problem in my opinion. GSB does a lot of things on campus. But one thing we don't do is tell people we've done a lot of good things across campus. And in my opinion, that's really not that important because it's what we're trying to accomplish are things that make a positive impact. Whether or not students know who made that happen comes second. And so if we can spend more of our time actually creating those positive impacts and not necessarily telling people, using our own efforts, our own time to tell people, hey, look, ISU, GSB did this, then that's kind of a misguided effort. Because a lot of students don't care about GSB because they really don't have a reason to do so from their perspective, because they don't know that GSB funds a student organization that they're in, or has helped fund VISHA and they take part in VISHA, something like that. But it's not important in my mind for us to be telling students, hey, look, we did this, we funded VISHA, you should like us more. It's more important to spend that time accomplishing something else that students can take benefit from.
I guess the neutral or negative image of GSB won't change unless you follow up saying GSB helped students achieve this, and follow it up with, what else can we do? How can we make the student experience better? I do think that, we haven't done a good job of communicating GSB's successes and the university's successes that we've partnered in. Because otherwise, why would a student take interest in what GSB is doing? I mean, if all you read is negative and we're not communicating successes and positives, then you get a one-sided conversation. Sure, we can do all the outreach in the world, but we cannot reach every student every time. We'll do our best, but I think that would probably be a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour job. Non-stop, no sleep, reaching out to every single person every week. I think that it's very important that we're doing outreach and really reaching out and communicating not only our successes, but also our shortcomings, where we have influence. Because GSB can help empower students, but it can't unless you're telling them, these are some of the things we've achieved in the past. Can we trampoline off that idea, get something better, something bigger? I think that that's really quite important. And even if it's not just, it's important that we don't just stop and say, GSB did this. It's, now what can we do?
Anything else? Hughes, Kletscher.
Yeah, so I just talked a little bit about how we don't think it's important for GSB to really be spending our time telling people how good we are. And I do think that that's important. But I think that coming from and taking full advantage of the channels of communication that I talked about earlier, that GSB is really not doing a good job with, is going to help increase and improve the way that GSB is viewed, just because people will become more familiar naturally through that method of what GSB is doing. We're not going to talk about our accomplishments, we're going to talk about our future. We're going to talk about what we're working on now. And that, when students become more familiar with the projects that we're involved in and how they can help, and when we bring students on board to collaborate with projects, that's how the image gets improved. And like I said, that's really not a main concern of ours, to work on how people think, how cool GSB is on campus. But this will just come naturally by sharing our ideas better with students and by bringing them on board with projects we're working on. And then over time, more and more people will become more familiar with what it is that not only GSB has done, but what GSB is doing and what GSB will do. And that's much more important in our perspective.
I think one of the things that's important to note is that GSB never has problems of image with the people it partners with. The people who GSB partners with know that what GSB can do for them, and how GSB works, and what it's up to. But we're working to reach out to the students who may not be those students that we've traditionally partnered with. So I think that some of it is tooting our own horn and making sure that we follow it up with, and this is how it happened, this is what we can do better. Here's what we can move forward with. I think that while it's important that we're establishing partnerships, and Zach and I have certainly made it clear that this is all about partnerships. It's not just saying, hey, we endorse Rediske Bauer. It's we're partnering with Rediske Bauer to build a better student experience. That's what we ask student organizations to do at the end of our speeches. And I think that that's really clear, that we want to partner with students, but we're reaching out to those other ones, I think, through these methods.
Thank you. The next question, we will also begin with Dan Rediske and Zach Bauer, and that is, sorry. What organizations outside of GSB have helped prepare you for running for GSB exec?
I guess to begin, I'll answer. I've been a part of freshman council at Iowa State. That was a good connecting experience, and I really learned a lot about a lot of the different things that go on. I made a lot of diverse connections at Iowa State. I've been a part of the Model United Nations Club. I'm a part of VISHA. VISHA's actually helped me a whole lot because as a freshman, I ended up with the co-chair planning multiple events with no money, no resources, and it was going out and making it happen. So I really think that being that resourceful in my first year at Iowa State, having really just a few sheets of paper saying, hey, this is how it happened in the past, these are what happened. We planned 3 events on $0 and 0 cents, and had successful events. So I think that was really a good experience. I've had 2 more years in VISHA after that to kind of not only have leadership experience, but to see some of the best leaders on campus really show their way.
Yeah, and for myself, it'd also be Freshman Council. It's an organization that really connects you with resources on campus to improve your leadership skills and help you prosper with your time at Iowa State. And then also my time as an ISU ambassador, authoring legislation through the State House in Iowa that really opened my eyes to the process of how to advocate for student causes.
Thank you.
I think there are a handful of experiences that have helped prepare me for this role outside of GSB. The first being having the opportunity to be a student and then an advisor for the President's Leadership class, and working with a group of first 30 freshmen each year who are really passionate about the university, looking to get more involved, working with former President Joffrey and current President Leith, and learning more about leadership is a really powerful experience. Also, I served as the vice president of the Iowa State Singers on campus, and that role really directs the fundraiser for the organization. I don't know if you've taken part in singing Valentine's ever before, but if you have, that's something that I helped run. And the year that I ran it, it was the most successful in more than 30 years of running the fundraiser. It had a 200% increase in our profits, and I was really proud of that. And then also my time as serving as a committee member for Dance Marathon, which in my mind is one of the most powerful organizations on this campus. What that organization is able to accomplish, bringing together passionate students who just want to make a difference, a positive difference in the community, is really inspiring for somebody like me who, I came into that organization not really knowing what to expect as the first time as a participant. Then this past year I served on the committee, and to see up close and personal the type of passion, the energy that people pour into something and can just give their all to make a positive difference. That's a really inspirational thing that has really opened my eyes.
I guess to touch on one other thing that I didn't get a chance to mention in the first minute and a half or so, is my time as a cyclone aide and as a student admissions representative. I've never been surrounded with so many students who are so passionate at Iowa State, about Iowa State, and have so much love for it. I don't think you can honestly give a campus tour without loving Iowa State, just because there's so many facts and so many figures on the tour script that you cannot possibly list them all and get a tour through. But really those leaders showed me all of the diverse areas, because the stars aren't from any one college. The cyclone aides, they're students from all across the college, from the Greek community. And it was just really a neat opportunity to network with different leaders, but also see what they're passionate about. Because not only do you see they're passionate about Iowa State, but they talk about what else they're involved in. So it's really been a great snapshot of all of the leadership at Iowa State.
Yeah, so my experiences at Iowa State have been diverse, and I've had some leadership experiences that aren't here at Iowa State as well that really have prepared me for this role. So like Spencer, I was in President's Leadership class, and that's actually where we first met. And I think something that was very important in that class that's helped both of us as leaders is developing relationships with other student leaders across campus and growing as leaders together. Because we have those connections with students who have different interests than ourselves that really help us now. And I'm involved in executive board in my sorority, and I'm involved in other multiple student organizations across campus. But I think for me, the biggest role that has prepared me for the vice president role is serving as the Minnesota FFA state president. So during my freshman year, I represented over 9,000 students and missed about 40 days of class. That's dedication, and that's what I want to do for Iowa State University.
Thank you. That's it, isn't it? So the next question will begin with Hughes Kletscher, and that is, what about GSB made you want to get involved, and with it, let me say this again. What about GSB made you want to get involved with it, and what has kept you involved in GSB this long?
Well, when I was a senior in high school, I was my student body class president, and student government in high school, I can say this now, is quite a bit different from student government at Iowa State. Most of what we did then was plan the dances, but I liked student government. I liked being involved, and at the time, the GSB president was my sister's boyfriend. They're now engaged, and so he let me know, hey, GSB at Iowa State is a cool thing. You should look into it. So my first week on campus, I asked around, how can I get involved on the Senate? And Senate seat for my college, Liberal Arts and Sciences, was open. So I applied for that position, and the LAS Council selected me. So I was a senator on GSB my second week on campus as a freshman. Didn't know what the heck was going on, but over time really began to learn what the organization is all about, and it was so much different than I first expected. We don't plan any dances here at GSB, but what we do is the opportunity to really, when I see a student group come in and we have the opportunity to help them out, we have the opportunity to make a real change happen. When we fund a project like Cyclone Cinema, when I was on the development committee for Cyclone Cinema, we saw that come to fruition. And now I go to a Cyclone Cinema movie and I see the place packed full and I know that I had at least some part in making that happen. That just makes me feel like I'm making a positive difference on this campus. And it's something that I really couldn't be more passionate about. It's making Iowa State better.
Your response there, Zach?
I think to kind of talk about why I got involved in GSB, you kind of have to start when I came to Iowa State. I came to Iowa State as a wannabe walk-on track and cross-country athlete. So my intentions for Iowa State was to come and be an athlete and get an education. Those were my two things. And as you can tell, I'm sitting here right now, so the athlete part probably didn't pan out. I can tell you it didn't. And one of the things I discovered, and what really brought me to Iowa State in the first place, was the community feel. And I soon learned that even though the athlete thing didn't pan out, that I was in an absolutely terrific place. And I decided that since I wasn't going to be spending 40 hours a week running, that I was going to be investing in the community that I loved. And so I've done that through being a Cyclone aide, being a part of VISHA, the largest student-run festival in the nation, being a student admissions representative, where I've given numerous campus tours to prospective students and showing them my love for Iowa State, as well as being involved in GSB. GSB is just another way that I'm giving back. And I think that that's why I joined it. And I also really want to better the student experience, because I think it's very important that students have good advocates within their body. I felt that because I was so passionate that it would be the place for me.
Anything else, Hughes Kletscher?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. So for me, the desire to get involved in the government of the student body was really, once I was finishing up with my Minnesota FA position, I was like, how can I get involved in Iowa State and use what I've learned in my leadership development so far to help students here, to really serve students and make their life easier, essentially, to help them grow as leaders. And so I got interested in the government of the student body, ran for a College of Engineering senator position, and was elected. And so far, throughout my experience, some of the things that I've loved the most is that every project that I've worked on has involved student input of a lot of students, close to 100, if not more than 100, on my two main projects that I've worked on so far. So for me, I love giving basically some sort of resolution, some sort of resolve to things that students care about and that they're interested in. Actually taking things that students care about and making an impact.
Thank you. This will be the last question that we address towards the vice presidents. What?
So I have a chance.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So yeah, I've also been involved in student government since my freshman year of high school. So obviously, like Spencer said, we're not planning prom dances or homecoming dances in GSB, but we do have roughly a $2.5 million budget that we allocate to student organizations. And that aspect just kind of really drew me into GSB, that we have a chance to affect over 30,000 students on campus through one organization, and by partnering with all 800 organizations across campus. So that's really one of the main aspects that drew me into GSB. And also the thought of that there's a lack of experience, or not experience, excuse me, leadership in GSB executive right now. And I think that's the main reason Dan and I are running this, because we know that we can better the student experience. We know that we have the ideas, the projects and initiatives to improve the student experience and to better Iowa State.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. The next question is our last VP question, and that is, Hillary and Zach, you both have been the chairs of one of the GSB committees. So could you please talk at length about what you have done as the chair of the committee and how that will transition into being the vice president next year's election?
Sure. So when I was elected in last spring, I was seated on the Public Relations Committee, and I was just serving as a member, and I was kind of threw into the position of PR chair after the previous one resigned due to moving out of the state, actually. So I was kind of thrown into the position not really knowing how to take on the position, but I think that with the help of other senators, I was really able to prosper in it. So just touching on some of the accomplishments, like it was stated earlier, Dan and I authored the new outreach program that replaced Connecting with Constituents, and which has already proven stronger than the past program. So it's a point system, allowing senators to work in GSB and receive points and work outside of GSB. So meeting with organizations, those types of things. And then also I put together the new senator packet. A lot of the time senators are thrown in the position just off the bat, and they don't really know what GSB is and what it can do for student organizations. So I think by creating that new senator packet, senators are able to learn about GSB and they're able to relay that information to organizations that they talk to.
Hillary?
Yes, absolutely, thank you. So, like Zach, I was a member of the committee initially during my Senate time, so I've been the chair of the University Affairs Committee since the beginning of the school this semester, so January now. And for me, right away, I was really excited for the opportunity because as a University Affairs Committee member, we had a very laid-back committee, so not to say that isn't fun and enjoyable, but we have the opportunity to have projects that actually make a difference, to represent students and talk to administration on behalf of them regarding all university affairs. And so right away for me, I knew I wanted to revamp how we did meetings every week. And so something that I've changed within the University Affairs Committee is that every week I expect every member of our committee to come to our meetings with a couple bullet points of what they've achieved on their project throughout this last week and a couple bullet points for what they plan to do within the next week. And you know, there's a couple members of the committee in the audience, and they know that, you know, I've had my weeks where I didn't get my stuff done, and they've had their weeks where they didn't get their stuff done. But it's about being upfront and saying, I failed to do what I needed to do this last week, so I'm going to make up for it this coming week. And so far in the University Affairs Committee, we've had some awesome progress, and we're trying out some great things. And I'm really excited to see what we can do in our next month of service.
Anything else, Mr. Bauer?
Yeah, I guess just kind of elaborate on some of the other things we've been working on. So like it's been stated before, the open forum, PR committee had a big part in helping planning that, which was a success, I would say. And then also looking into having another open forum with Board of Regents members and state legislators. So by increasing that representation, because I guess PR really doesn't deal with projects, but promoting GSB and the student experience. So by having those open forums, increasing that dialogue with university, local, state administrators, those types of things, I think it really betters GSB as a whole, because then we can relay those thoughts and concerns of students that don't have those resources and improve the student experience.
Yeah, another way that serving as committee chair has helped prepare me for the role as vice president is just checking in on projects with senators. So like we do every week during our meetings, like I do with personal emails, because that's something that as vice president, you know, maybe I'll have to check with Spencer and they say, hey Spencer, are you actually doing what you said you were going to do? Because that's important. It's important that we make progress every week, every month. And so I think continuing to use that experience, use upfront approach so that we make progress on what we actually want to do, and as well as communicating those ideas with people across campus, administration, and students that we know can help us achieve our objectives.
Okay, thank you. And our last question of the night, we will begin with Hughes Kletscher, and that is, as the president and vice president, how will you hold the executive cabinet more accountable to the decisions?
I think that starts with making sure you have the right people in the right positions. And I'm going to go back to when I talked about, I was in the President's leadership class with President Joffrey, and the one lesson that I remember most from him was he always say, it's about getting the right people in the right seats on the bus. You can have the right people on the bus, but if they're not in the right seats, you have a problem. So you have to shuffle people around. It's about getting the right people in the right seats on the bus, and I'll never forget that. So what Hillary and I plan to do is make sure that not only do we have the best student leaders we can possibly get on our cabinet, but we have them in the best possible positions for them to achieve whatever it is that they are passionate about that's in line with what we want to accomplish. So right now, about 6 or 7 roles of the cabinet are required by the GSB bylaws, but the rest of the positions are kind of ad hoc, so the president can create them and they can go away at their discretion. For example, my role as Director of Student Affairs is one of those positions. My role only exists because the current president believes that this position should exist, and he doesn't have to have it. And so Hillary and I are going to make sure that we create a cabinet that works for the people who are on it, because we know that there are great student leaders out there who aren't really being, who could be used much more effectively in the GSB cabinet than perhaps they are right now, or maybe they're not even members in the cabinet because their position's not right, or what have you. And so we just believe strongly in making sure we have the right people in the right seats.
Thank you.
Well, Spencer took the story from President Joffrey that I was going to use, but I firmly believe in that one. I also believe in that you need to have passionate people, and that you need to make sure that people understand that it's about why they do things. That I'm a firm believer in the golden circle principle, and that it's why you do what you do, and not just what you do. And I think that if we have passionate advocates for students, that they will do it because it's why, and not just because it's why. And I think that that's very important. I would say if you don't know what the golden circle is, hit it up. It's a great TED Talk on YouTube. But I think that Zach and I will really make sure that, right now Zach and I don't have any plans for who will be in our cabinet. We don't have anything penciled in even, and we're really planning on scouring campus for the most passionate and most knowledgeable student leaders in their respective areas, because we think that having the right people in the right seats is important, but passion is hands down the best thing.
Thank you. Anything else, Hughes Electoral?
Another very important thing to have for an effective cabinet is this is a group of people who are really working on whatever they're passionate about, but they need to know what is expected of them. And there needs to be clear and complete expectations laid out for every single member of our cabinet on every single project that they work on. And Hillary talked about this earlier with her goals and her sub-goals and all of that engineering type thinking that she has going on. And I know that we'll be able to have that on our cabinet because we have the type of leadership, at least in one of us, to be able to make sure that everybody has a plan for whatever it is they're working on. And we can come to our meeting every week, we can talk about that plan, we can talk in specifics about what has been accomplished to that point on your plan, and make sure that everybody knows what's expected of them. And then if we have a problem, then we have to have a discussion about what's not being accomplished. But hopefully we don't run into that issue. And as long as everybody knows what's expected of them and we have clear and complete expectations detailed for every member of the cabinet.
Finally, Rediske, Bauer.
Yeah, just to kind of hit on that one, it's actually what I wrote down at the beginning and didn't end up talking about in the first answer, is that roles need to be set out even before the position's filled. I think that expectations for the role comes before you find the person who fits it. I think that that's very important, and I think the expectation of any cabinet position is that you're communicating, whether that's with me, whether that's with other people who are passionate about the same thing. I think that cabinet positions don't necessarily just need to be one person. I think that if you need two people to do a job, or if that person needs to delegate a task to another student who's just as passionate, I'm perfectly fine working with two people in, say, director of student affairs or university affairs or whatever it might be. Director of outreach, director, if we have a webmaster, which we will, if we need two webmasters or two people who are in charge of social media, PR, I think that hands down we have to have great communication.
Time.
Thank you. We're now moving to closing statements. Thanks, and we'll begin with Rediske.
I think Zach and I have tried to make it clear throughout the last 6 weeks of the election that what we're looking for is not just to be elected and to disappear. We intend to continue carrying on the campaign for a better student experience because it doesn't just stop with an election. We think that GSB can't just disappear and that we need to establish partnerships, and we need to establish partnerships in places we haven't before. Whether that's reaching out to groups that we haven't. International Student Council was very happy to hear about all of the different things that GSB had available for resources for them. And they were very interested to hear it. I was actually very surprised that they hadn't been reached out to because they're in the same office space we are. So I think that GSB communicating better, undertaking projects with that communication, and using that communication to represent students effectively is really what Zach and I really intend to do in the next year.
Thank you. Hughes Electoral.
Well, first thing I want to say is thank you again to everybody who came out to tonight's debate. We know it's not necessarily the most exciting thing for you to sit and listen, but we're glad that you took the opportunity to learn more about both candidates. And to those who are watching online, thank you as well. It's important to really be informed before you cast your vote next week. Hillary and I have spent the past 5 weeks or so meeting with more than 70 student organizations and communicating with thousands of students about our campaign. And we call it a Students First campaign because that's what we've been focusing on. Everything that we do is focused on the student body as a whole. And we have a number of projects and a number of pieces of our platform that are completely student focused because that's what we think is important for GSB to be spending its time on. And we think that GSB has kind of lost its focus over the last few years. If elected, Hillary and I really plan to restore that focus on day one. And there's a lot of aspects to that, but some of the most important ones are making sure that GSB has two-way communication going with as many students that are interested in it as possible. So we're sharing our message with students, and we're making sure that we are open to receiving feedback about that message and hearing a message from that student as well. Taking full advantage of the types of 21st century technology, communication technology that the GSB has kind of been ignoring over the past few years, making sure that that's really available. We're also looking to create some unique projects, like the bike share program I mentioned earlier, like implementing a program that would allow students to spend dining dollars at off-campus restaurants, which we think would give a lot more choice to students, especially those in the residence halls, and really increasing sustainability efforts as well. That's just a brief overview of our campaign. We've really had a phenomenal time communicating this message with students and hearing feedback as well. And if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, we'll be around after the debate. But we'd really appreciate you considering casting your vote for Hughes and Kletscher on March 11th and 12th at vote.istate.edu. Once again, we thank you so much for coming out to tonight's debate.
Thank you, Spencer. So I too want to remind everyone that the elections will be taking place online at vote.istate.edu, March 11th and 12th, next Monday and Tuesday. I want to thank everyone for coming out. I'm glad you all had a ball. And for all those watching online on YouTube later, thank you for watching. Let's get that view count up. The next GSB elections event, per se, will be next Thursday at 6 p.m. in the Gold Room. We will announce the winners for the senatorial and the executive winners and slates and all that good stuff. So I hope to see as many of you out there next Thursday. It's going to be amazing. So I want to thank you all again for coming out, and everyone have a safe trip home.